Hey, what's up developers, welcome back to Developers Commute. My name is Hitesh Kohli and in this video we're going to go forward and explain Jetpack Compose. Previously we have done some basics around Jetpack Compose. I've explained to you why is the shift from XML to Jetpack Compose so different and how the XML and Jetpack Compose works, recomposition, the many things, the basics of Jetpack Compose. In this video we're going to go forward and explore some of the more basics of Jetpack. Let's get started. Now I want you to explain recomposition further. Now, there are some important aspects that you'll learn throughout your Android journey. Now these aspects you won't be taught about them, but these are the practices that you may find or read online somewhere. Now the recomposition, as I previously talked about, the composable re-executes and every time a value changes. That's recomposition is. One important aspect of recomposition is, suppose there are three functions that are being executed inside of a composable file. Let me give you an example. Now as I've taken this composable function of name text, and there are three functions, just simple composable functions called first name screen, second name screen, and pet name screen. As you can see in this composable function, these composable functions will not execute by order, and that depends upon the thread. If the thread is free, composable will start to execute. Most likely they will execute in order, most likely they won't, so it's up to the thread, not to us. So an important aspect that we have to keep in mind is that since composables execute differently, if we are passing a value from first name screen to a second name screen and supposedly the second name screen executes first, then the value won't be passed. Let's suppose threads decide that the second name screen executes first. This thing gets built by a recomposition, and then the first name, and then the pet name screens. Now the execution is followed from this portion to this portion, and as we can see, this from second, first, and pet. For example, if second name screen requires a function, requires some kind of variable from the first name screen. Now if second name screen executes first, then it won't be able to get that variable. So your variables should not be dependent on the screens. They should be they should differ from each other. That's why we store variables outside of the screens, make them as stateless as possible. Let me give you one more example. Now as you get more exposed to composables, I know that it's your first time writing a composable, but there are some good practices that you need to keep in mind. So let me give you an example. So let me explain some good practices in Jetpack Compose. I have a variable here, right? var name, a variable name Hitesh. Now this name is being injected right here in through a constructor. The name text is the function that is being called. Name flows from this name text to this text, hi Hitesh. It comes from here to here, and this name flows from here to inside of this name variable, and it will say hi Hitesh. That's how the functions work. Okay, and one important thing is we also have a button here. This is a button, some kind of button function which makes a button on the screen. So what happens here is a text hi name Hitesh, and it will show on the screen hi Hitesh. Now this will be shown on the screen. What happens inside of the button? Now the user presses this button. Now what happens is the get name function is called. What does this get name function do? It takes the name and assign the name as Rahul rather than Hitesh. So the get name actually returns the value right here where the function is being called, and it assigns a variable name. Here's the get name function, and it assigns this name of it, which means the Rahul is being assigned to this variable. Rahul gets assigned to Hitesh, and now the variable name is actually not Hitesh but instead Rahul. Okay, the variable name has changed. The recomposition will happen, and what will happen is the name text gets called. From the name text, the flow changes again. Now the hi Hitesh would change to hi Rahul. So that's how the composables function. Now previously I've talked about how composables can execute in any order. To avoid that, we use variables outside of the composables. Now let me give you an example of making a variable outside of the composable and how the flow is happening and why is it necessary to make the variable outside of the composable. So let me give you an example right here. Now this is a composable function. We have this animation player which basically plays the animation. We have this text which basically shows the count on the UI, and this is a variable called count. What happens here is basically every time the composable recomposes, the count plus is also executed and the count gets updated. So with every composition, the count variable will be executed. Now in order to avoid that, what we can do is simply make this var outside of the composable, and every time this particular print count executes, the count variable will remain the same, even if and pass it as the constructor. pass it in the constructor right here, and then the count will always remain the same, because even if with the recomposition, the count is always the same outside. That is the best practices that we follow in Jetpack Compose. I hope that everything is clear to you guys, and I have added some real value to you guys. I'll catch you next time. For now, that's it, and I'll catch you next time. Bye bye.